So I'm going to make a big, bold prediction here, and I'm going to say that this game is not going to be as high scoring as last year. So that's my bold prediction. Last year was like 55-49 or something crazy like that. So in no way do
Oh
I
yeah.
see that many points being scored this year. No way.
No, I agree with you there. I really think that in this game, I don't think that there's not going to be exciting plays. I don't think that both these offenses are not going to, try to put put some exciting plays as far as the pass game. I really think that this is going to be two defenses that are going head to head. I really see that Ole Miss is going to lean on the run game more because I feel like with the run game, again, I'm not. That's why I'm a fan of it. You can control the clock better. You can take time off the clock, and most of this time, it's a lot easier for you to be able to catch and you can go to different targets, and I feel like it's a lot easier to control that than getting a pick or something when you're trying to pass the ball and you're trying to go pass heavy. So I really do believe that Ole Miss leans on the run game and much what we saw in South Carolina, but I do believe we're going to amp it up. I believe we're going to have more tight end play. I just think that the way we distributed the ball was effective because we kept South Carolina guessing, and we're going to have to do the same with LSU because if we do what we did against Kentucky and we have our one go-to guy because the defense just puts so much pressure and has such great coverage. I don't believe that we'll be successful against LSU because no matter when we have elite playmakers, we have elite guys in our backfield, but to make it just a pass catch between one significant wideout on our team isn't going to help put points on the board. LSU is going to be able to knock that down, point blank. So I think that we spread the ball out, and we do the ground game, because we can control and all that. And I do believe again that those third down conversions, and being able to not be heavy on the penalties, which is tough to ask in a game like this. I think that that's another thing that we're going to have to really have situational awareness is the penalties because with the way the atmosphere is, with the way the energy is, and just the intensity of this game, it's really easy to start getting penalties in these type of games. And that's one thing that we've seen that's played to Ole Miss. We did a lot better job of it in South Carolina. But and again, when you're in a rivalry like this, you're playing at night in Death Valley. Things are going to get heated, words are going to get exchanged, and it's really easy to get off your footing and your concentration. So that's another thing, that I think will be heavy in play along with special teams in this one.
All right, folks, I've kicked out 3 people from the chat. Let's talk ball. Let's just talk ball. That's all I'm going to say. All
Oh
right.
goodness.
Doc, no Iowa show yesterday. We had all sorts of chaos going on in my life, like evacuation kind of stuff. So I'm like 300 miles
Oh,
away
I
from
know.
home.
Kudos to Mark, I was going to say, because I noticed you're in a different setup, and I was like, look at him during bracing a hurricane out here and doing multiple shows, not just our shows. I mean, but like they say, the show must go on, and here we are bringing football to you. So thanks to Mark, making everything happen behind the
So
scenes for everybody too.
I do appreciate it, and we are good. Now, yeah, so we're going to try to
Mhm.
pull one together, Doc, sometime this week, but I can't guarantee it. All right. Uh, so, yeah, this game in Death Valley against LSU. So, you've been around the Ole Miss family, the Ole Miss fan base for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So I know I think this is so different with college football than anything else, that there is like a different feel, a different vibe, a different approach to different rivalries. Obviously, they all have their different flavors. And for Ole Miss, uh, the schools are close to Alabama. So there's a different deal with that series. Obviously, the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State, that is, in state, bad blood, all of that going
Yeah.
on. How would you phrase and how would you describe what goes on with LSU and Ole Miss?
Oh yeah, this rivalry is nothing less of being heated. No joke. I mean, you got the thing about the corn dogs, the jokes about go to hell LSU. There was a whole column that I was meaning to read about how we started, go to hell LSU. It's a really unique story about back in the 60s. Anyway, I wish that I had read the column, but I mean, this is like I said, one of the most underrated rivalries. There's definitely no love lost between these two teams, whether we're playing in Baton Rouge or definitely when they come to town in Oxford. It's always interesting to see all the LSU jokes and all the LSU fans, come into contact with all our Ole Miss Rebels. But again, it's really exciting. I think this week 7 is just around the SEC, around college football is going to be a big week. I mean, there's so many rivalries and there's so many things that are gonna happen. I mean, we got Texas OU, we got Ole Miss, against LSU. So I mean, week 7, we thought week 6 was going to be crazy, and it was crazy. How about them Arkansas Razorbacks, by the way? But week 7, I mean, is full of rivalries and everything. But like I said, there's no love lost between the Bayou Bengals and the Ole Miss Rebels. That's a love hate relationship. And just looking up, I was going over the stats. I mean, uh, since 2010, the Tigers have gone 10-4, and they lead the series against the Rebels. And since 2000, they've gone 65-6 in night games. And to icing off the cake, like I said, the Rebels are really going to have to be on their toes, because remember, Brian Kelly is 9-1 off bye weeks, and so the Bayou Bengals are coming into this one not only rested, refreshed, but they're on their home turf. They're not coming to Oxford for this one, you know. And sometimes the bye week can be good, sometimes the bye week can be bad. Like I said, just ask Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Missouri, the good side of bye weeks and also the bad times. But Kelly has proven when he's fresh off of bye week, and he's not only on and steady, he's also got a chance and opportunity to play the Ole Miss Rebels. Like I said, this game for me is a playoff implication game. I do believe that a 2-loss team is going to be really difficult, even going 10-2. Even with the expanded playoff to get in this one. So I really feel like LSU and Ole Miss are playing for a lot. Not just outside the SEC, but on the national picture. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, like I said, look at how crazy week 6 was. Tennessee falls at home to Arkansas, on the road to Arkansas, and then of course nobody expected Vanderbilt to topple Alabama. It was really funny because you're seeing Lane at the post game presser, and he just kind of stops, asking about what's going on here, because again, like Lane said, we're probably never going to see that ever again. But man, it was something to watch. And I'm sure that both Arkansas and Vanderbilt were happy to pay those post game fines just for those kind of wins. But like I said, there's just so much crazy stuff happening, and this is definitely going to be a matchup. It's going to be heated, but I agree with you, Mark. It's going to be a gritty game, and it's going to be a low-scoring game. I don't think it's going to emulate anything we saw. As prolific as both these offenses are, as these quarterbacks, are their signature video game kind of offenses. I don't think we're going to see that here. I just think that it's just going to get down to the wire, because there's just going to be so much intensity, and I really do believe we're going to see the heart of the defenses. We're really going to see what the Ole Miss defense is made of, and we're also really going to see what the Ole Miss offense is made of going against an LSU defense.
Yeah, so with LSU, I've seen them play twice, and really they've played the 2 games that really matter. They dusted off their FCS and their Group of 5 opponents, but of course they opened in Vegas against USC. Great game, went down to the final play, basically the final play, as they lost by a touchdown. USC setting up for a field goal and broke the play for a touchdown, and LSU loses that game. And then the South Carolina game, I thought they were completely overmatched and outplayed in the first half of that game, and Lenore Sellers got knocked out, and that seemed to really play into LSU's hands, as Robbie Ashford was not up to the challenge. And still credit LSU for a big comeback win on the road in that game against South Carolina, and they pulled that out. So I've seen them play down to the wire. Both games ended on the final play. South Carolina missed a field goal. Otherwise, that's an overtime game. Same with the USC game. So we're seeing LSU play 2 really close games against good opponents. USC may not be quite as good as we thought earlier. They lost to Minnesota last week. Didn't look great. Offensive line issues. South Carolina, again, early on, looked better than what I anticipated, but maybe they're playing back to where they're supposed to be sitting in the SEC after we see them lose by 24 points against Ole Miss. So I do think that Ole Miss is a better football team. Not substantially, but I do think that they're a better team. I just think defensively they're a better team. I don't think that LSU has cleaned up all of their messes from last season in which they were just a historically bad LSU defense. I do think that they've addressed a lot. They brought in Blake Baker, defensive coordinator at Missouri. He's made changes. They brought in transfer portal additions, but none of them were anything on the level of like a Walter Nolan. They were stopgap kind of guys. They've lost Harold Perkins, one of the best players in the SEC. So I think defensively, this is where I think Ole Miss can take advantage, not blister them for 50 points like they did last year, but where there's a big advantage, I just think, on this side of the ball for Ole Miss, where the LSU offense is excellent, one of the top offensive lines in the country, weapons at wide receiver. I trust Garrett Nussmeier, excellent decision-making quarterback, has an NFL caliber arm. That's going to be a great matchup, but I really think that Ole Miss's weapons can really make life difficult on Saturday night for LSU secondary.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's like you said, I think it's gonna be a battle for secondaries, like you mentioned, LSU secondary, is not up to par. They've cleaned things up and they've had their issues. With LSU, when you talk about them, they have big playmaking ability, and I think and they throw the ball 61% of the time. So, but again, when you got the kind of defensive front like we have and also the secondary, it was really good to see that they finally came together last week at South Carolina. They definitely cleaned up those penalties, and I think they're going to make it difficult. And they finally look like they figured out some stuff. And I feel that this couldn't be a better time, a more perfect time for them to find. And we're talking about lines, how the offensive line, the defensive lines play an intricate part. Like I said, you can't deal with the big guys up front. We talked about that LSU offense. That LSU offense, their offensive line, they are good at pass blocking, no doubt about that. But they're not so good at the run block. And I think, like you said, I think that that's going to be another key thing that Ole Miss uses on the defensive end to try to be able to tear down through that LSU offense. Is they're not strong at the run block. So I think that the secondary again is going to come into big play and try to put a stop on that offensive line. Like I said, they all have proven parts but again, when you look at Ole Miss, when, not being biased, LSU has its strong points. But again, I got to agree with you, Mark, on this one. I think from all the teams that have gone into LSU, into Baton Rouge, playing in these type of games, I think Lane Kiffin is probably bringing one of the best Ole Miss teams that we have that's most complete on both sides of the ball. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to win ball games in intense games like this. Like I said, not that LSU can't make big plays. They have a big playmaking ability. They have a strong offensive line, but there's a lot of holes in there that I think that Ole Miss is prepared to be able to address on both sides of the ball, where they can make it a difficult night. That's why I think it's going to be a low scoring game. But I think the defenses on both sides of the ball are going to have their work cut out for them, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to stop each other's offense, because at the end of the day, it's those points that are put on the board. You can make some big plays, but they have to result in points. And when they don't result in points, or you can't, you're stuck in those fourth downs and you got to punt it away, or you're not going to take a shot at it. Those can make the difference in these games. We've seen it out through all the weeks. Like I said, Ole Miss not being able to score more than 3 points in the second half for an offense that's not typical of, definitely can't do that in LSU. But I don't think they'll have the same struggle like that in the second half against LSU, because I think there's, like you said, there's just too many holes, too many weak spots in the defense, that I believe that we have our offense to be able to fast hand. But again, I think our defense and our secondary, especially the secondary, are going to try to get LSU in that offense, especially that offensive line with their weaknesses and holes, to try to expose that early on to get ahead in this game, because either team doesn't want it to get too far ahead, because as much as these teams have the ability to come back, you don't want to make this a comeback in the second half by a couple touchdowns, even a touchdown and a field goal. You don't want to make it that kind of game with this much intensity, especially playing at Baton Rouge and at night.
Look at Robert bringing the facts here. Most prolific offense we face. Tough environment. By the way, South oldest rivalry, Auburn, Georgia. First played in 1892. Ole Miss and LSU is only 2 years behind that. Been hating each other on the gridiron since 1894.
Wow. Well, it's been a while. That's definitely a a long-lasting courtship by these two, and like I said, there's no love lost between either one of these teams for sure. No matter what era you came in, the intensity just grows at this one.
Leanne, you were talking lines, meaning offensive line, defensive line, but how about those
Yes.
other lines? How about those other lines? How we doing on the other lines?
I haven't picked lines this week. But yeah, no, like I said, the shift, we knew that, we knew this was gonna be a low line, just because of the way this things is, of course. Ole Miss, I think the line started out 2.5, and I've seen it go now it's at 3. It was yesterday at 3.5. I mean, it's gonna be close. I'm going to personally tell you on this one. As much as I know that Ole Miss would love to put 64 points on that board or get close to it, again, I think this isn't going to be the same kind of game we're going to see, just because I think that there's a lot that's going on here. So I like the under in this one. I like under 64 points. And at the end of the day, you just want to get the win out this one. And I think that's what the Rebel are more focused on. We know they can put up those big point numbers, and we can do that. But at the end of the day, I think that I really like the under in this one. And man, I don't know if I'm ready to call it. That's just, I have to look at the money line on this one. I think Ole Miss comes out. I think Ole Miss, if any team was going to go into Baton Rouge and make the upset, in the Ole Miss team that was finally going to win in Baton Rouge, it's going to be this one. I like Ole Miss on the road, but again, that's one of those live lines. I'm not quite sure. As much as I have the confidence Ole Miss, this is just one of those games that it's just very tough to call, and it's a Wednesday. So I might be flipping a coin, and whoever wins on that one, that's who I'll take the thing. But I think both these teams are capable. I like Ole Miss coming out on this one. I think the Ole Miss is better prepared. But again, we're playing in Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly is just phenomenal coming off a bye week. They're rested. I just feel like there's a lot of things that could go. But again, Ole Miss is better prepared. I like the way they looked in South Carolina. I think if we amp it up, we come out of this one. So I like the Rebels. I like the Rebels in this one. I'm not sure if I like them by 3 points. That might be a money line bet for me, but I definitely like the under in this one. I like the under in 64.